February 4th, 1968. Hill 881 South, Khe Sanh Combat Base, South Vietnam. The air shook with artillery thunder. Corporal James Anderson Jr. pressed his face against rain-soaked red clay, feeling the earth pulse with each North Vietnamese 130mm shell that screamed overhead. 6 days into the siege, the Marine Corps base was encircled by 20,000 NVA regulars who were slowly tightening the noose. Anderson squinted through his Winchester Model 70 sniper rifle scope. Standard Marine Corps issue. Utterly useless for what he needed to accomplish. 1,700 meters northeast, barely visible through monsoon haze, North Vietnamese officers were coordinating the next assault from a ridgeline position. He could see movement. Shadows. Nothing more. The crosshairs blurred against dense jungle vegetation. His spotter, Corporal William Davenport from Biloxi, Mississippi, lowered his binoculars and shook his head. Too far. Can't confirm rank at this distance in this weather. Anderson's hands trembled as he reached into his rucksack. What he withdrew would earn him immediate court-martial if discovered by the wrong officer. A hollow bamboo tube. Glass lenses salvaged from a destroyed village. Crude by military standards. Revolutionary in execution. What the hell is that contraption? Davenport whispered, eyes wide. Something my granddaddy would have called making do, Anderson replied, carefully mounting the homemade scope atop his military optic. The bamboo scope created a makeshift telephoto system no Marine Corps manual had ever authorized. Through the enhanced magnification, the distant ridge suddenly crystallized into perfect focus. He could now distinguish uniform insignia. Facial features. Map cases. 2,100 yards. Monsoon wind gusting 8 miles per hour from the west. Temperature dropping. Anderson made calculations his instructors at Camp Pendleton Sniper School had never taught because they believed such shots were impossible. This better work, he whispered to himself. He exhaled halfway, held his breath during the natural pause between heartbeats, and squeezed the trigger. The Winchester cracked. The report echoed across the valley. Through his bamboo-enhanced optics, Anderson watched an NVA colonel crumple to the ground nearly a mile away. Before the remaining officers could process what had happened, he had already chambered another round. Hit, Davenport confirmed, voice betraying astonishment. Adjusting left 1 minute for next target. By the time surviving enemy officers scrambled for cover, Anderson had fired 5 shots. For confirmed kills at ranges the Marine Corps considered beyond human capability. Davenport stared at him with something approaching religious awe. That wasn't just shooting. That was something else entirely. Anderson disassembled his bamboo scope and tucked it away. Sometimes the rule book doesn't account for what's possible. Neither man knew that this unauthorized innovation would save hundreds of American lives over the next 2 weeks. Or that the Marine Corps would spend decades trying to erase the fact that the most significant sniper technology advancement of the Vietnam War came from a black corporal using bamboo and scavenged glass. This is the story of how one man's childhood hobby became a weapon the Pentagon tried to classify out of existence. The boy who built telescopes. January 15, 1947. Omaha, Arkansas. James Anderson Jr. was born into a world that didn't expect much from black children in the rural South. His father had served in a segregated World War II unit in Italy, came home decorated, and found work as a mechanic in a garage that paid him half what white mechanics earned for the same labor. But James Anderson Sr. brought home broken things. Carburetors. Radio tubes. Discarded binoculars. Parts that most people would throw away. The world might not see your brilliance yet, he told his son. But that don't mean you should hide it. By age 10, young James had built his first telescope using cardboard tubes and lenses salvaged from those discarded binoculars. Local teachers noted his exceptional aptitude for physics and mathematics. In 1950s Arkansas, such talents in a black child were rarely nurtured. But James kept building. Kept experimenting. kept teaching himself the principles of optics that would one day extend the reach of American military power by nearly a mile. His hunting rifle, his grandfather's beat-up Winchester, became an extension of his body. "I could hit a squirrel's eye at 300 yards, he later told a fellow recruit. The Ozark Mountains taught him windage, elevation, and patience. When Marine Corps recruiters appeared at his high school in 1965, most classmates viewed the draft with dread. Anderson saw opportunity. The Corps had recently integrated their Scout Sniper program. His marksmanship scores were perfect. "Figured that might be worth something to the Corps," he said. Boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina, tested more than his physical endurance. He was one of only 11 black recruits in his training platoon. The drill instructors pushed them beyond limits. But during marksmanship qualification, Anderson put 10 shots inside a 3-inch circle at 500 yards. Captain Michael Trevino pulled him aside after witnessing the display. "Private, have you ever considered sniper school?" Anderson's response was immediate. "It's the only reason I joined, sir." Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton was a crucible that broke men who thought they were unbreakable. Anderson thrived. He absorbed lessons on ballistics, windage, and camouflage with intensity that impressed hardened instructors. But what truly separated him was his intuitive understanding of optics. During one field exercise, his scope fogged up in early morning dew. While other students waited for equipment replacement, Anderson disassembled the optic and modified the internal O-rings using materials from his kit. The improvisation worked perfectly. His instructor's evaluation read, "Exceptional marksmanship. Tendency toward unorthodox methods requires monitoring." Nobody knew those instincts would soon become the difference between survival and annihilation for 5,000 Marines trapped in a remote Vietnamese fire base. Hell's Perimeter. January 21, 1968. Khe Sanh Combat Base, Quang Tri Province, South Vietnam. The North Vietnamese Army unleashed hell at 0530 hours. Over 100,000 artillery rounds would fall on Khe Sanh over the next 77 days. The base sat just south of the DMZ, 14 kilometers from the Laotian border, controlling access to the Ho Chi Minh Trail. 5,000 Marines. 20,000 NVA regulars surrounding them. 4-to-1 odds. President Lyndon Johnson was haunted by Dien Bien Phu, the French defeat 14 years earlier that ended French colonial power in Indochina. "I don't want any damn Dien Bien Phu," he reportedly told Joint Chiefs Chairman General Earl Wheeler, mispronouncing the name of the battle that terrified him. The comparison was accurate. Like the French at Dien Bien Phu, the Marines at Khe Sanh were surrounded, dependent on aerial resupply, and under constant bombardment. They lived underground in bunkers reinforced with sandbags and salvaged timber. Monsoon rains turned red clay to soup. Visibility was measured in meters, not kilometers. For snipers, the siege created an impossible equation. Their skills were desperately needed to eliminate enemy officers directing the assault. But standard Marine Corps doctrine limited engagement ranges to 800 meters. The NVA commanders stayed well beyond that distance, directing operations from positions the Americans couldn't reach. Corporal Anderson arrived at Khe Sanh in late 1967 as designated marksman with 3rd Battalion, 26th Marines. His spotter was Lance Corporal Miguel Rodriguez from San Antonio, Texas. Rodriguez had been the first Marine in the unit to treat Anderson as an equal rather than a diversity quota. "My grandmother came from Mexico with nothing but hope," Rodriguez once said during night watch. "Your people built this country without being asked. Seems to me we're both fighting for something bigger than those officers at headquarters can understand." 3 days into the siege, Rodriguez was killed by mortar fire while observing NVA movements from a forward position. The loss left Anderson without his spotter and without the friend who had helped him navigate the racial dynamics of a Marine Corps still adjusting to integration. His new spotter was Corporal William Davenport, a taciturn Mississippian who had initially requested transfer to avoid serving with a black Marine. Now they were partnered at the moment when teamwork mattered most. The morning of February 4th, Their mission was straightforward: observe and report NVA troop movements from Hill 881 south. Engage only targets presenting immediate threat. Do not exceed established range parameters. Then Anderson spotted the officers. 1,700 meters distant. Planning the next assault. Beyond the reach of any weapon the Marine Corps officially possessed. "I can make those shots," Anderson said quietly. Davenport turned to him with disbelief. "Not with standard issue, you can't. That's beyond max effective range." Anderson reached into his pack and withdrew the device he'd been crafting in secret for a week. Bamboo. Salvaged glass. Techniques learned building telescopes in his Arkansas childhood. "If it works," Anderson said, "no one will care. If it doesn't, we're probably not making it through this siege anyway." The moment hung between them. Protocol versus desperate innovation. Finally, Davenport nodded. "I'll spot for you. But if anyone asks, I never saw that thing." Bamboo and glass. The bamboo scope looked absurdly primitive mounted atop Anderson's military-grade Winchester. But through it, the distant ridge resolved into crystalline clarity. He could now distinguish insignia. Facial features. Maps spread across a field table. "I count 6 officers," he whispered to Davenport. "One appears to be colonel based on insignia. Range 1,700 meters. Wind approximately 8 miles per hour from west." Davenport, still skeptical but professional, called adjustments. "Elevation for 1,700 puts you at 38 minutes. Wind call 3 minutes right." Anderson settled his crosshairs on the NVA colonel's chest. The target was gesturing at a map, directing the assault that would kill dozens of Marines if allowed to proceed. "Send it," Davenport whispered. The rifle cracked. Through his improvised optics, Anderson watched the colonel crumple. Before remaining officers could react, he chambered another round and acquired his second target. "Hit," Davenport confirmed, astonishment breaking through professional calm. Adjusting left 1 minute for next target. For confirmed kills. 1 mile distant. In conditions Marine Corps doctrine declared impossible for precision fire. As they gathered equipment to change positions before counter-sniper fire could find them, Davenport looked at Anderson with newfound respect. "That wasn't just shooting," he said. "That was something else entirely." Anderson carefully disassembled his bamboo scope. Sometimes the rule book doesn't account for what's possible. By midday, Lieutenant Colonel James Wilkinson had summoned Anderson to the command bunker. A summons that typically signaled either commendation or court-martial. The bunker was partially underground, entrance sandbagged against shrapnel. Inside, cigarette smoke hung thick. Colonel David Lowndes and Wilkinson hunched over tactical maps, faces illuminated by hanging lanterns casting shadows on earthen walls. "Corporal Anderson reporting as ordered, sir." Colonel Lowndes looked up. "At ease, Corporal. I understand you've been conducting unorthodox operations this morning." Anderson hesitated. "Sir, I engaged enemy officers at range per directives to disrupt command and control capabilities." At 1,700 meters, Wilkinson interjected. "And poor visibility with equipment that isn't listed in any Corps inventory." The moment of truth. Anderson straightened. "Yes, sir. I utilized supplementary optic system of my own design to extend effective range of my issued weapon." He expected immediate reprimand. Instead, Lowndes leaned forward with interest. "Show me." Anderson removed the bamboo device from his pack. The officers examined it with professional curiosity rather than condemnation. "This is based on Galilean telescope principles," Anderson explained. "Forward lens captures and magnifies the image. Rear lens enhances it before entering the standard scope. Effectively doubles magnification without sacrificing light transmission." Lowndes exchanged glances with Wilkinson. "And you built this from bamboo and salvaged glass?" "Yes, sir. I've been experimenting with telescope construction since childhood." The principles are straightforward, even if materials are unconventional. Long silence. Then Lowndes asked, "How many confirmed kills with this device?" "For this morning, sir. Believe I wounded 2 others." Another pause as implications sank in. "For NVA officers eliminated at previously impossible range. Normally, Corporal, I'd have you on the next chopper out facing charges for unauthorized equipment modification," Lowndes said gravely. Then his expression changed. "But there's nothing normal about our situation. We're surrounded, outnumbered, running out of options. Sometimes unconventional problems require unconventional solutions." He turned to Wilkinson. "Get me Captain Reynolds from Charlie Company. I want to know if we can reproduce this." Anderson ventured, "Sir, mass production isn't necessary. I can teach other snipers to construct these. Every sniper team could have one operational within 48 hours using materials we have access to." Lowndes studied him. "You understand what you're proposing goes against every protocol in the manual?" "Yes, sir. But the manual was written for conventional warfare. There's nothing conventional about Khe Sanh." A distant explosion rattled the bunker. Lowndes nodded decisively. "You have 24 hours to train our other snipers. But this stays completely off the books. Officially, you're conducting advanced optical familiarization training. If this works, we'll deal with bureaucracy later. If it doesn't..." He left the sentence unfinished. "I understand, sir." "One more thing, Corporal," Lowndes added. "Why didn't you bring this innovation through proper channels before deploying it?" Anderson considered carefully. "Permission would have been denied, sir. Some ideas need to be proven before they can be accepted." For the first time, the colonel's stern expression softened. "Carry on, Corporal. And for what it's worth, I believe your granddaddy would be proud." The ghost snipers. The next 24 hours transformed sniper operations at Khe Sanh. Working with 8 other scout sniper teams, Anderson demonstrated construction and use of his bamboo scope enhancement. Some Marines were skeptical. Master Sergeant Frank Westbrook, senior sniper with 20 years experience, called it field expedient nonsense. "This isn't how the Corps trained us," Westbrook complained, awkwardly holding the bamboo attachment. "Looks like something out of Robinson Crusoe." Anderson answered calmly. "With respect, Sergeant, the Corps trained us to accomplish the mission with available resources. Right now, standard resources aren't sufficient for the task." Private First Class Thomas Jenkins was more enthusiastic. "My dad's a carpenter back in Oregon," he said, carefully measuring bamboo segments. "Always told me the right tool makes all the difference, no matter what it looks like." By dawn February 6th, all 9 sniper teams had constructed functioning bamboo scopes based on Anderson's design. Each had been range tested on the limited firing range within the perimeter, confirming increased effective range and accuracy. The morning briefing assigned teams to overlapping sectors around the perimeter with explicit instructions: target enemy officers and radio men. "This operation does not exist on paper," Lieutenant Colonel Wilkinson emphasized. "Your mission logs will record only confirmed kills, not the means by which they were achieved. As far as Da Nang is concerned, you've all suddenly become exceptional marksmen." As teams deployed, Anderson found himself paired with Davenport again, assigned to northeastern perimeter with clear view of Hill 881 North, currently in enemy hands, serving as primary staging area for attacks. "Things are different today," Davenport commented as they crawled into position before first light. "Yesterday you were risking court-martial. Today you're practically running sniper school." "Yesterday and today aren't so different," Anderson replied. "We're still just trying to survive." As morning mist lifted, NVA forces became visible on opposing hillside, preparing for another assault. Through enhanced optics, Anderson clearly identified officers directing positioning of troops and weapons. "Range 1,900, Anderson whispered. 2 officers by large boulder directing mortar placement. Davenport confirmed through his spotting scope, now also fitted with bamboo enhancement. "Confirmed. Wind shifting, 5 miles per hour from east." Anderson fired. Seconds later, first officer fell. The second looked around confused, unaware the shot came from extreme distance. Anderson's second round found him before he could take cover. Across the perimeter, other sniper teams engaged in similar operations. Private Jenkins and his spotter eliminated 3 NVA radio men in rapid succession. Staff Sergeant Wilson's team reported 4 confirmed kills of suspected officers. Even skeptical Master Sergeant Westbrook radioed confirmation of 2 long-range kills. By midday, 19 confirmed enemy officers had been eliminated, along with 11 radio men and 8 mortar crews. The effect on North Vietnamese operations was immediate and profound. Their attack, building momentum throughout the morning, suddenly faltered. Command elements were being eliminated faster than they could be replaced. Colonel Lowndes, monitoring from command bunker, observed the change with cautious optimism. They're confused. Their assault elements are hesitating without clear direction. Captain James Wallace, intelligence officer, added, they're pulling back from exposed positions. They can't figure out how we're targeting their command elements at such extreme range. It violates everything they know about our capabilities. The psychological impact proved almost as valuable as tactical advantage. NVA forces began constructing elaborate overhead cover for officers, limiting their visibility and effectiveness. Intercepted radio traffic indicated growing paranoia among North Vietnamese command about American seemingly impossible accuracy at extreme distances. As night fell February 6th, sniper teams returned exhausted but triumphant. Combined efforts resulted in 38 confirmed enemy kills, 20 of them officers, without single casualty amongst sniper teams. Unprecedented achievement defying conventional military doctrine. In the sniper unit's bunker, subdued celebration took place. Sear rations shared along with rare cans of beer hoarded for special occasions. Racial tensions that had divided the unit seemed momentarily forgotten as Marines who'd once requested transfers to avoid serving with Anderson now sought his advice on improving their bamboo scopes. Master Sergeant Westbrook raised his canteen cup. To Corporal Anderson, who proved sometimes the best solution isn't in any manual. Anderson accepted the acknowledgement with quiet dignity. To all of us, and to making it home to tell stories no one will believe. Davenport pulled Anderson aside as others laughed. I owe you an apology. When you first joined our unit, I was less than welcoming. Anderson nodded, waiting. Where I come from in Biloxi, things are a certain way. People stay with their own kind. That's what I was taught. Davenport looked down at his hands. But out here, with death coming from every direction, I've realized something. The enemy doesn't care what color we are. And I'd rather have you watching my back than anyone else in this godforsaken place. It wasn't grand declaration of brotherhood. But in context of 1968 America, particularly for a man raised in segregated South, it represented profound shift in perspective. Appreciate that, Anderson replied, extending his hand. Davenport took it without hesitation. Erased from history. Over the next 2 weeks, Anderson's bamboo scope transformed Khe Sanh's defense. Sniper teams operating with enhanced optics eliminated 73 confirmed high-value targets at ranges previously considered impossible. Signal intercepts revealed growing frustration among NVA commanders. One captured document referred to ghost snipers of Khe Sanh who could strike from invisible positions at impossible distances. NVA tactics shifted dramatically. Officers no longer moved openly. Command posts relocated to deeper positions, hampering ability to coordinate assaults. Artillery spotters became reluctant to expose themselves, resulting in less accurate bombardment. By February 20th, the tide had turned. While the base remained under siege, coordinated mass infantry assaults that threatened to overwhelm defenders in late January had diminished in frequency and effectiveness. Through it all, Anderson continued refining his invention. Working with Lieutenant Colonel Harris from Force Logistics Command in Da Nang, he documented precise measurements and techniques, developing standardized construction method that could be taught to snipers throughout Vietnam. On March 7th, Anderson was summoned to command bunker. Colonel Lowndes informed him he was being rotated out on next available flight. Orders from Da Nang, Lowndes explained. You're being temporarily assigned to Sniper Instructor Group at Camp Pendleton. Your expertise is needed for Special Training Initiative. Anderson understood the subtext. They wanted him to teach others his techniques, to formalize what had begun as desperate improvisation. What about my team, sir? What about Khe Sanh? The siege is breaking, Lowndes replied with cautious optimism. Your innovation has been key factor in disrupting enemy command and control. The next morning, Anderson boarded CH-46 helicopter lifting off from Khe Sanh's battered airstrip. As aircraft gained altitude, he looked down at the base that had been his home for months. The sandbag bunkers. The shell craters. The weary Marines still manning positions. Some were down there. Davenport and others were continuing the work he'd started, using bamboo scopes to extend their lethal reach beyond what military doctrine thought possible. His arrival at Camp Pendleton 3 days later brought partial answer to unspoken questions. Rather than public recognition one might expect for a Marine whose innovation saved countless lives, Anderson found himself sequestered in small office with classification officer who handed him non-disclosure agreement. By signing this, you agree not to discuss specific construction or capabilities of your optical enhancement system with anyone not specifically authorized by Marine Corps intelligence. Anderson read carefully. May I ask why, sir? If this system is effective, shouldn't it be widely implemented? The officer's expression remained neutral. Official position is that premature disclosure could compromise tactical advantage. Enemy adapts quickly to known capabilities. Left unspoken was what Anderson suspected was real reason. The Marine Corps was uncomfortable acknowledging that one of its most significant tactical innovations came not from research laboratories or defense contractors, but from black corporal using bamboo and scavenged glass. Nevertheless, Anderson signed. Over the next 4 months, he worked with engineers and optics specialists to refine his design into something manufacturable using modern materials. The resulting device, officially designated Special Purpose Scope Attachment XM3, bore little external resemblance to his bamboo creation but operated on identical principles. By August 1968, first production models were being field-tested by select sniper units throughout Vietnam. Reports confirmed effectiveness, extended range, improved visibility in adverse conditions, enhanced accuracy at distances previously considered beyond small arms capabilities. Anderson himself never returned to Vietnam. After completing consultation work on XM3 project, he was assigned to administrative duties at Camp Pendleton until honorable discharge in 1970. His official record contained no mention of his bamboo scope innovation, merely noting special technical consultation assignments during final year of service. Upon returning to civilian life, Anderson maintained silence about his contribution to sniper technology, honoring the non-disclosure agreement. He settled in Oakland, California, using mechanical and optical skills to establish small but successful camera repair business. He married Ellen Richards, a schoolteacher, in 1972. They raised 2 children, a son who would later serve in Operation Desert Storm, and a daughter who became optical engineer for NASA. For decades, the story of bamboo scope remained classified, known only to those who served at Khe Sanh during those crucial February 1968 weeks. Official history of the siege mentioned improved sniper effectiveness but attributed it to enhanced training and tactical positioning. Technical manuals for XM3 scope attachment made no reference to origins in makeshift bamboo device. It wasn't until 1997, nearly 30 years after the siege, that the story began emerging. During Khe Sanh Veterans Reunion in Washington, D.C., William Davenport, by then retired police officer from Mississippi, approached military historian documenting oral histories. There's something about Khe Sanh that's never been properly told, Davenport began. Something about a Marine named Anderson and a bamboo scope that changed everything. The historian was skeptical at first. But as more veterans from 3rd Battalion, 26th Marines came forward with similar accounts, the story gained credibility. Thomas Jenkins, who'd become optometrist in Portland, Oregon, provided detailed descriptions. It was genius in its simplicity. Anderson understood that sometimes most effective solutions aren't most complex ones. Master Sergeant Frank Westbrook, initially most skeptical of Anderson's innovation, perhaps offered most powerful testimony. "I've served in 3 wars. I've never seen anything like what Anderson accomplished with that homemade scope. We were hitting targets at ranges that defied everything in the manual. The brass might not want to admit it, but that bamboo contraption saved hundreds of American lives." In January 2000, after 3-year investigation including declassified mission reports and technical evaluations, Marine Corps officially acknowledged role of what they termed field expedient optical enhancements in defense of Khe Sanh. The carefully worded press release didn't mention bamboo or salvaged glass. Didn't name Corporal Anderson specifically. But those who'd been there recognized belated acknowledgement of what they'd witnessed. For Anderson himself, public recognition came too late. He'd passed away in 1995 after battle with lung cancer, likely result of Agent Orange exposure during Vietnam service. He'd taken secret of his bamboo scope to his grave, never once violating non-disclosure agreement, never seeking credit or recognition for innovation that changed modern sniper warfare. His son, Marcus Anderson, speaking at 2000 Marine Corps ceremony finally acknowledging the bamboo scope's role at Khe Sanh, offered simple but powerful statement. "My father never talked about Vietnam. He never sought recognition. He believed he'd done his duty, nothing more. But I think he'd want people to know this: innovation doesn't come from laboratories alone. Sometimes it comes from necessity. Sometimes it comes from men who refuse to accept that something is impossible just because it's never been done before." The XM3 scope attachment, direct descendant of Anderson's bamboo innovation, remained in limited Marine Corps service until 1982, when it was replaced by more advanced optics systems. But its influence extended far beyond its service life. The principles Anderson discovered, using secondary magnification systems to extend effective range without compromising light transmission, became foundational to modern military optics development. Today, Marine Corps Scout Sniper School at Camp Pendleton includes brief mention of field expedient optical innovations during Vietnam era in its curriculum. The full story of Corporal James Anderson Jr. and his bamboo scope remains largely unknown outside military history circles. His name doesn't appear on monuments. His face doesn't grace recruiting posters. But on Hill 881 south at Khe Sanh, now part of Vietnamese territory and slowly being reclaimed by jungle, there's a small memorial placed by American veterans who returned in 2005. It bears no official sanction. No government funding supported its construction. Just former Marines who remembered. The inscription reads simply, "In memory of the ghost snipers of Khe Sanh." They saw what others couldn't. They hit what others wouldn't dare attempt. They saved us all. Corporal James Anderson Jr.'s name is listed first.